whatever story you have, when you start to lose the audience, you just put in a sound effect and people laugh and they love it and it brings it to life. And suddenly you have the possibility of anything. You can go anywhere. And the host of the show, moi, now has a function other than to say, please welcome these good friends of mine, the Powder Melt Biscuit Band. Now you can do something entertaining and you get into low comedy. He could do flatulence, the best flatulence, the most wonderful flatulence. We were the people, a Prairie Home Companion, brought flatulence to public radio. It didn't exist until we came along. I was an English major, so I knew about flatulence from Chaucer, from The Miller's Tale, where the man is walking down the street and he comes by the house of the girl he's in love with, and he wants her to give him a kiss, and she has her boyfriend, who's with her in the room, stick his bare rear end out the window. It's dark, and the lover walks up to the window and he kisses as there is a fart. This comes from Chaucer.
That's literature.
We studied this. We wrote term papers on this in English. And that's where it all came from a guy named Tom Keith. He was the guy who started the whole thing. Without him, the show would have died a quiet death after about 2 or 3 years. We all would have been so bored.
This is Tom's idea, to put the shoes on a string. So I took this from Tom, but this is just walking and going up the stairs is on the tips of your toes. Tom taught me this.
Yeah.
And down. So you can hear
all of those sound effects really liberated the show from, one man talking and telling a story. You could bring in amazing things. You could have parrots who would speak.
Hello, I like your glasses.
Would quote from William Wordsworth and
floating like a flower over the hill. No, that's not. Never mind.
Rockets would go up at any moment. Man could play Purple Haze on a bagpipe. And you have a story. You could have a lady in a bikini and holding her Pekingese there, and she would be cursing them in French. We started using actors. I think we found them. They lived across the street from me in St. Paul. George Musham and Molly Atwood. They were in the Children's Theater, but they were real actors. They were, serious people. And then Ivy Austin came along, who was from Brooklyn, and she did a wonderful Brooklyn person, and she did a kind of a showbiz person. And Richard Munes was a big singer, and he did sort of singerly people. And then in the 90s, the show moved back to Minnesota, and that's where these people came in. Sue Scott, you came in, I think, about 92. How did we find you?
It was an audition.
No.
You held an audition, and
our only audition.
There was an audition, and you were looking for funny people, and you were looking for singers. And so I had worked at an improv company in town. Excuse me. And so there were a bunch of stand-up comedians and improvers, and then a bunch of opera singers, all at the audition. And it was and there was an audition, and then there was a callback, and we read scripts with you and with Tom, and then I started that a couple months later, that fall of 92.
That sounds so professional.
I know.
I can't believe that was us.
I know. I remember the audition. I had done some voice things, some character voice things for Minnesota Public Radio. So I knew everybody in the room except you. So I walked in and everybody was like, hi, and there were some hugs. And you said, everyone seems to know you but me. And I said, okay. So that was it. That's how it started. Yeah.
So once we found you, Scott, we never looked for anybody else. I mean, there were other various women who came along, Lily Tomlin and Meryl Streep and people of that ilk.
Sure.
But you played all of those roles. I think we had you do witchy people at first, and shrieky people, and we had you do New Age sort of a veterinary aromatherapist. I think you played.
I played several of those type of things. Yes.
You had cats, and you had a good voice for that.
Yeah.
Have you found reason to use that since, or no?
To use sort of
sometimes
a new
at home,
agey,
maybe with Ron, or no?
Sometimes with Ron, I do. I'm like, hello, please? Yeah. I'm wondering if it's your turn to wash the dishes. Just wondering if maybe that's something we could talk about.
You played.
There's your sarcasm.
You played my mother, of course.
Yes.
You played Dwayne's mom.
Right.
A kind of all-powerful mother.
She is all-powerful.
Yes, right.
Yes. Right. And I am, honey, I am all-powerful. Don't ever forget that.
Yes,
all right, honey. Yes. Okay, all right.
Yes, right, of course.
Yes.
And you played femme fatales. You did a great Edith Piaf, La Vie en Rose. How many times did you do that on the show?
Oh, hundreds.
Yes.
While they make brothers.
Oh, wonderful. There was no script that couldn't be improved by La Vie en Rose. It was Ruth Harrison at the Herndon County Library. I miss her. We were maybe the only show to really get to the deep down feelings of reference librarians.
There were reference librarians that would come to the show, and one time they had made buttons that said, "We really are reference librarians," yes. And I still have that button. We got that from Tom Keith from the Cafe Bouffe.
You could do double talk.
Tim does that.
The master of double talk was Tim Russell, who could do it in any language. You could do it in Russian.
This middle is not Trump.
How do you do that? Do you focus on the vowels or what?
Let me think about it. It's actually tape running backwards from an old radio guy, you know. That's,
and of course, anybody in Minnesota could do Swedish. And Norwegian, a close cousin. And you could do a Scotsman, right?
That's a difficult one, that is. It's a great lot of guttural stop. And in these times, not good.
There was no need for me to write dialogue ever. I could just put in parentheses TR French. Italian. Ah, you made the job easy. How did we ever come across? You came in around the same time as Sue Scott.
A little bit later, but Walter Bobby, famous New York director.
Walter Bobby.
Who played your mother on occasion.
Yeah.
He had to leave to do Chicago. He was that was going to make him a millionaire.
Oh yes.
So, yeah. So they were looking around for somebody to fill in for a week or two,
and we knew you from the radio because you were on WCCO. Did you do mornings?
Basically mid-morning, always mid-morning. Yeah. And then on occasion, or the last several years, I was doing stuff on the early morning show.
But you didn't do voices on the radio, did you?
I did some voices on the radio.
Oh,
I did Grandpa Clay Goodhue and Buzz Studley, the traffic reporter, stuff like that.
Uh-huh. And you were one of the few Americans who was able to do Sid Hartman.
Today's sports hero, Garrison Keillor. What a guy he is. Sid is now 100 years old.
Yes, so, very few people are aware when you do Sid that you're doing Sid Hartman, but you are. Yeah. But your ability to do presidents, I think, was uncanny, and I don't remember how we discovered that. I think the impressions of presidents probably started with John F. Kennedy, and there were whole albums who came out, people doing his voice.
Von Meter, yeah.
You did his voice.
Yes, ask not what Zoom can do for you. Ask what you can do for Zoom.
So
bring it up to date.
There we were, and then of course LBJ was easy to do.
I have done all I could as your president. Yeah.
And you did you did Richard Nixon really well.
Let me just say this. They're going to delete 28 minutes of this Zoom effort, and that's okay with me.
It was all in that descending inflection, wasn't it?
Yes, and the jowls. You had to imagine the jowls.
Right. And then Jimmy Carter was a little odd.
Peter Farmer from Georgia.
Yeah, very soft.
I'd like some Malays on that bologna sandwich.
Very, very soft-spoken. And then you did both Bushes. You did Old Man Bush.
Not gonna do him. He's gone. But there's another guy that came along.
Right. You did the second guy. The second guy was easier to do. He was Old Man Bush had a combination New England and Texas.
He was very patrician. I don't know how I got a boy like George Jr. Yeah, well, I was wondering about that too.
And then along came Mr. Clinton, and that was easy.
That was real easy. All I had to do is look good. Well, I hate to bring it up, but you missed somebody along the way there, Garrison.
That's your right. You're so right.
Gipper, yeah.
Oh, you did a great Reagan, just a beautiful Reagan. But the one I was amazed at, I think you were the only person who really could do Barack Obama and get him right.
Thank you. It took me a while to I'll figure it out, but it was all in the rhythm of how he speaks.
We did a sketch once, and we got so many complaints about it. I've been waiting to do it again. Do you remember how that went? They're by the campfire.
Yeah.
And
you made some soup for me. I remember that
in the evening, and I say, I got a confession to make. Partner. While I was making that soup, I dropped a bar of soap in it by accident, and by the time I fished it out, it was just practically all gone. So,
that's why you didn't have any soup yourself then.
Well, I wasn't hungry.
Well, I wouldn't have been either if I'd known there was soap in it.
Yeah, well, you had 2 helpings of it.
Yeah, well, I didn't know it was soap soup.
Yeah, you couldn't taste it, huh?
It tasted about as good as anything else you ever cooked for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Maybe I should make it more often then, huh?
Yeah, let me just say, I guess you didn't notice that there was more bourbon in the bottle last night than there was yesterday morning, and when it was practically empty, huh?
What are you trying to tell me?
Well, take a wild guess.
Are you saying that you pissed in the whiskey?
No, nope. It's horse piss.
Oh.
You drank 3 glasses of it. Evidently, you've forgotten what good whiskey tastes like.
Why in the world would you go and do a thing like that, huh?
Well, I'm trying to stop drinking.
So that's why you didn't have any?
Well, it works.
It worked. I thought it was a good script, but people hated it. Well, I don't think it was the first time we used the term horse piss on the show, did we?
It's totally agricultural.
Yes, exactly. With the most complaints I think we ever got Mr. Newman was the parody of Paul Simon and The Sounds of Silence.
Oh yeah.
I take responsibility for that. You had no responsibility at all. I don't
was
know
dragged
if you
into
remember,
that. Yeah, dragged into it.
or if you want to remember.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, darkness, my old friend. I have gone to bed again because a virus came into me, and I'm feeling tired and gloomy, and my head hurts, and I'm achy, and I'm hot and full of snot. I hear the sounds of sickness. I have a fever and I ache. I went to church for heaven's sake. I taught my Sunday school class, and those kids had germs to pass. While I was teaching them the parables of Jesus, I heard their sneezing and all the sounds of sickness. I came home and went to bed and felt the throbbing in my head. And I'm getting the idea I will soon have diarrhea. And I can't go out for fear I might explode and drop a load and hear the sound of sickness.
May I tell you the secret of a good false throw up? The secret is that you got, sure, this is an amateur doing like a 10-year-old doing in a movie theater doing someone throwing up. And you go, right? But the professional does this. It's the pre-burp. If you get the pre-burp in there, people are running out of the theater. I know that from being a 10-year-old and dumping over a crushed ice on the floor with a and then the theater. I'm not proud of that, but it's true.
When this pandemic comes to an end and we go back to theaters, I hope you won't be doing that, Mr. Newman.
I'll be chased out.
Have mercy. Have mercy. I remember meeting Robert Altman as one of the high points of the show. He was such a great man, and he made the movie A Prairie Home Companion, which I wrote, and which now I wish had been a better movie because it turned out to be his last movie. Mm-hmm. But he was a man who absolutely loved his work, and thus the great breadth of the movies that he made. It's amazing how much that man did in his career. He absolutely loved to work. He was so sick when he directed the movie. He came to St. Paul. He came to the Fitzgerald Theater. He was suffering from bladder cancer. He had a heart transplant that was starting to wear out on him, and anybody else would have gone off to the home. And he told me, he said, I want to go with my boots on. I don't want to die waiting for it. And it was such a great experience to meet him. The movie suffered from my rewriting, and he tolerated it, and I kept rewriting lines, and people, who make movies like John C. Reilly and Woody Harrelson and Kevin Kline and Meryl Streep, they were horrified, to be handed a sheet of paper one morning that was entirely different from the one that you had memorized from the night before. But he tolerated it, but it was not a good, I wish it had been a better movie. I don't dare watch it again. Have you seen it?
I haven't. We've certainly seen it. I've certainly seen it. I haven't. Truth be told, I'm looking at a framed poster of the movie right now in our guest room. Yeah. But I haven't actually seen the movie in a while. Have you, Tim?
Yeah, it was on AMC. I didn't see it, but last week. So get ready for a $24 residual check.
Oh, okay.
You know, as speaking as the only one that wasn't in that film,
Yeah,
among us, I sat beside Altman at the Methodist Church camp, Grove, Ocean Grove.
Ocean Grove.
Ocean Grove, and it's a it's a huge. It holds what is 8,000 people in this big pine tabernacle, from 1896 or something. It was 110 degrees, really hot. My recollection is that you actually took off your shirt. I'm not sure you did that.
No, that was the one where they took the light. They turned all the lights out.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so you do that. You come back, and you're from the break of the show, and then you're holding up your hands and you're waving at the light guy, and you're telling them to turn off the lights. So all the lights went out, and only moonlight is coming in, and you can't see people fanning. I think you were thinking, Garrison, that would cool the place off. So Altman is watching this, and you go up and down, and you prowl like a ghost up and down the aisle, just going through these shafts of light, telling the monologue. It's brilliant. It's wonderful. It's amazing. And then Altman leans over at the end of it, and the place goes crazy at the end. The lights come up, and he leans over and says, and he's thinking about the film. He goes, "How in the F do you shoot that?" Mm-hmm. And he got that. That was you at your best, and you're like improvising in the moment. You did that, and it was an amazing thing. I watched the film knowing he knew that.
Well, I look back on the show and all those years, and of course, I only think of disasters because that's how I was brought up. I come from Scots people, and that's all we remember. My mother, every Sunday when we got in the car to go to church, she always imagined that she had left the iron on in the kitchen and that the house was going up in flames. Every Sunday, she imagined that. She never ever got over it. And I come from the same people. What do you remember, you people who were innocent bystanders and unindicted conspirators?
Paper. I remember doing George W. Bush at the end of the script, and I dropped the final page. And this is at the Hollywood Bowl with 15,000 people there. And fortunately, it was Bush, because I reached down to try and find it on the stage, and it took about a split second. But if you're in radio, that's like 25 minutes.
Yeah, right.
I picked it up and I said, "I forgot what I was doing," and it sounded totally normal, like it was part of the script.
Uh-huh.
But it was a terrible snafu, and Yeah.
There is the famous story of during a catch-up where I hear you tell our stage manager behind me, Garrison, that we, for some reason, were reading the wrong script or not the rewrite. And so you decide to reach around Tim Russell and note new lines, the corrected new lines in the script on his page while we are live on the air doing the catch-up script. And there's an iconic picture of you reaching around Tim and writing with your Sharpie in the margin, literally while we are live doing this script. And Tim didn't drop a beat, and neither did I. And I was watching the whole thing. But it was an iconic moment. And Robert Altman brought that up to you, Tim, right? When we first when we met with Altman.
Yeah, he'd blown up that picture, whoever took it, and had it on the wall. Sue and I went in to sort of audition for Robert Altman. All he wanted to know is if we thought we could do something in the movie.
No, could we walk and talk at the same time?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, sure, we can do that. He said, "Well, this picture, this is what I love about radio." Yeah. So he was an old radio guy. Appreciated it.
I hated rehearsal because the show was never finished, and even the Saturday morning sound check, I would revise the scripts. And that must have been irritating to professional actors like you, to have somebody who, A, gives you no direction whatsoever, and B, can't stand to rehearse. I hated rehearsing because when I heard what I had written, it sounded flat. to me. There being no audience there.
Right.
And
right.
so I
The only
kept
thing that really needed rehearsal was sound effects, you know, so that so we could figure out where the sound effects, what they were going to sound like. That sometimes helped, but otherwise it was fun.
And sometimes we would steal away to our dressing room and run through things again. So
you didn't really.
Oh yeah, no, that was supposed to be a secret, but now that we're on Zoom, we're revealing all the secrets. Yeah, we would steal away. And we were...
What I thought was remarkable the years I was there. I came in about 8 years after you guys, maybe even 10 years after you guys. And it was a handoff from Tom to me. I did the travel shows, and then later after Tom passed, I only from 2008 I think did do the rest of the shows. But you were unflappable when things would go wrong. But there was one, we knew that you were screaming, oh my God, you're screaming. When you go, all right, all right, all right. You weren't talking to the audience, you were talking to yourself. As for instance, the first time I heard that was when the rat lady at the Indianapolis State Fair, a live show, and she comes up and she has this rat and she goes, wah! At you about 6 inches from your face. Do you remember this, Garrison?
I have no recollection of anything on the show. The entire history is all a blur.
Well, you just backed up. I could see all the color drained from your face, and you went, all right, all right, all right. And you're telling yourself, it's all right. You're calming down. But I never saw you. Things happen, and planes went by and things were drowned out and locusts hit you in the face and so forth. And the worst you ever did was all right. And then you went on. And it was pretty amazing. You wouldn't let us fail.
Yeah, not only that, but I remember some of the celebrities that would be on the show, and they were nervous. And they might be movie stars or Broadway stars, but the idea of live radio. So they'd be up in the dressing room and they're nervous. And often you had given them Piscicata Wattaquattamagan in the script, and they were just spending hours trying to get it down and to phonetically. I'm like, just go out there. Well, what if I mess up? I said, well, it's fine. It's all fine. Garrison will make it funny, or he's the king of the save. Don't worry about it. You cannot go wrong. He'll turn it into gold. Don't worry about it. And it's true.
If you mess up, it's better.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes I'd say, sometimes it's even better. Don't try, but sometimes it's better. Brad Paisley was backstage one show in Nashville at the Ryman, trying desperately to get down Piscicata Wattaquattamagan beautifully. And I said, don't worry about it. Seriously, it doesn't matter. Good, it'll be funny. Bad, it'll be funny. Either way, it's funny. So
it was the first syllable that bothered them.
No, it was one of those things where you couldn't read it. There were so many syllables, I would just tell people, just memorize it. Don't look at it, just memorize it, just say it.
As for my unflappable demeanor, it comes from a fundamentalist upbringing where you are reading about the last judgment and the tribulation. You are expecting the world to end at any moment, and the remnant of believers will be lifted up into heaven and to join the Lord there, and all of these things, and animals talk, and Noah's Ark, and Job, and covered with boils. I mean, when you grow up with this, somebody sticking a rat in your face is not, it's all right.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's okay.
It could be worse.
Yes.